All right, everybody. Today we're going to try to figure out how to do a lit review and also how to um, come up with operational definitions. These seem to be among the harder tasks that are encountered in the prospectus template and in drafting up a prospectus. So I figured I'd give you a little bit of a helping hand here just so that maybe you will do something that looks like what I'm wanting. And so let's see what happens. Okay, so I'm going to go to my prospectus template here just a moment. And see what we can do. I want to share some content with you, so we're going to share window, and I'm going to go to my prospectus template here. And actually, as you can see, I'm already in the prospectus template itself. So this is where I want to be. Now, I'm going to change a couple things because, I'd be using a different title, just so we are clear. Okay, I'm going to change this up here. Okay, you can kind of see what I'm doing here, more or less. Okay. Okay. So let's get back to where we're supposed to be. You can see there's quite a bit of instruction here again. And this is, again, something that we've really tried to do with each one of the sections as well as we can in this template. And so this is a section where you will compose your literature review. And, I'm actually giving you a video right now here of how you can do this sort of thing. So probably there's all sorts of ways you can do this. There's a funnel categorical design you can use that can be used with only a handful of empirical research articles required. The completed literature review will reflect information. You can think of it as data of a sort that you've reviewed from the empirical research articles you've selected on your topic. And again, make sure to look at Chapter 8 of your APA 7th edition publication manuals for how to do in-text citations. A lot of people get this wrong, and that can be a real problem. And again, the length of the completed lit review should range between 4 and 6 pages. However, you may write more, of course, if you wish. We won't stop you from writing more. We just don't want you to be really short here, because then that becomes a problem. One space between words, two spaces after punctuation seems to be the thing we're doing these days. Of course. And just remember the usual things about college paragraphs. They usually contain a bunch of sentences. You know, we're not quite, you know, we're kind of beyond the sort of elementary school sort of paragraph writing, I would think. Okay, so that's one of the things to be looking at. And, you know, if your lit review lacks the content and in-text citations from the articles that that you're intending to include, then of course that can become a problem. So, you know, if I see a blank section here, then that gets zeroed out, period. I think that's one thing to keep in mind. If you're not including proper in-text citations from those, there's a problem, clearly. But this is really kind of a basic. I consider this to be more a no-brainer than anything else. So, I'm going to go ahead and realize a couple things. One, I can just simply get rid of the instructions now that I no longer need them. Okay. And I'm just going to do an example of what one of these may look like. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take information from an article review form. So I might say something like, Benjamin and Crosby it's a little more visible, 2019 were interested in examining if imagery related to prohibiting guns would prime aggressive thoughts, just like images of guns with, just like images of guns have been shown to do. And maybe I'm going to make reference to a previous thing I've done here or reviewed. We'll pretend. Okay. The authors took tested 23 students from a medium-sized university. participants were randomly assigned to one of three conditions. And if they strike out, gun with, I'll just say gun, and neutral object condition. So you can see how that looks. And participants I don't want to word this, viewed the assigned image, rated its quality, and then they let's see how I want to word this too. Sometimes you have to think about these things. And then they were given 3 minutes to complete as many word fragments on an aggressive word fragment task as they could within a 3-minute time limit. The authors measured proportion of aggressive words completed as the dependent variable. The more aggressive words completed, the more accessible aggressive thoughts were. The authors found that both the weapon, the gun, and gun prohibited conditions significantly increased accessibility of aggressive thoughts. Okay, so we can do that. The authors concluded that guns prohibited signage may have the unintended consequence of priming aggressive thoughts. Okay, so I mean that's right there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That's right in that range of what you'd want for sentences even. And I've kept it fairly simple. Note something very important. Although I have a lot of the same information on the article review form, I went ahead and just simply typed it in myself rather than try to do a copy and paste job. And the reason I do that is because I find that a lot of times mistakes get made when people copy and paste. And so I think it's always a better case scenario to do things a little bit more on your own. It may be a little more time consuming. As you can see, it definitely consumed some of my time making sure that I was getting my thoughts together. And I'm a seasoned professional at this, so of course, I would expect, that there'd be some issues, okay? And I want to look at some of this anyways, because there's some things a little wonky with the, let's see, make sure that, I don't know if I want justified, I want something a little different there. So anyway, this is what I have, at least for the a sample paragraph. This would be one of several. Given that this is probably going to be since this is intended to be a replication report for me, that this would be the last article that I'd end up reviewing because it is the one that'd be most relevant to my particular project. Okay, so that's just something to give you an idea of how you would go about doing this sort of assignment. We'll deal with the rationale a little bit later. But, again, one of the things you can see what we're going to do is, kind of create our demographic variables, however we want to do that. And again, I think the most important things are age, gender, ethnicity. If I'm going to go ahead and have college students, again, as my sample, I may go ahead and classify them in terms of the number of college credit hours completed, or, I could define it in terms of freshman, sophomore, junior, senior. That would be fine too. Gender, I'm going to define as male, female, other, with participant specifying, or decline to state. Okay, since that's actually a legitimate thing to do too. That gives all the power to the participant and demonstrates that we understand that gender is a social construct, is not exactly binary. Okay. Ethnicity, I'm going to go ahead and define as such. White, non-Hispanic, Hispanic, African American, Asian American, Native American, and then I'll leave a category for other. again with participants will specify. That can take care of that. Okay. I don't really need marital status. I really don't need hometown. I don't really need to worry about religion or sexuality for this one, so I'm just going to go ahead and delete those. Delete what you don't need. I don't need the instructions here anymore, so I will delete those. Okay, main variables that I'm going to want is weapon prime condition. I'm going to define that as gun image, unprohibited image, and flower. So I'm telling you what these are. I'm going to have another variable called accessibility of aggressive thought. Make sure that I'm actually spelling that correctly. Let's see. There we go. And I'm going to define this as number of aggressive words completed in on a 22 item aggressive word completion task with a higher number of aggressive words completed, indicating more accessibility of aggressive thoughts. Okay, I don't need the instructions anymore, so I'm just going to go ahead and delete that. Okay. And sometimes we just have to play around here. Alrighty, and let's see. I don't need any of these other examples, so I'm just going to get rid of those. But what you see is what I'm doing here is I was telling you this is how I am measuring everything, just so it's very clear that this is what's happening. So again, this is how I try to operate as much as I can, by providing information and doing so in a way that tells people that this is how I measure. Again, all these things have, concepts behind them. We could talk about what a prime is, for example, and we could talk about the theory behind weapon primes and all that sort of thing. But that's not really what a operational definition is. It's just simply saying, this is how I'm doing it. This is the measurement I'm using. This is kind of an idea of almost the instrument I'm using. Accessibility of aggressive thought, that is something that, or aggressive thoughts rather, that's something that, again, there's a theoretical construct behind. And we can think of that in terms of cognitive schemas. We can think of that in terms of associative networks, all sorts of things like that, which sounds wonderful, that presumably, when people are primed with, aggressive related stimuli, those associative networks or schemas are activated. And when that happens, that means the person is thinking more aggressively, blah, 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 blah. But that doesn't matter for a main variable. We don't care about concept with an operational definition. What we care about is how in the world am I measuring it? So what I'm doing is I'm communicating, not the concept that I just gave you, but just simply that, hey, it's just simply the number of aggressive words completed on a task. That has a bunch of word fragments. That's it. And that the more aggressive words completed, the more accessible aggressive thoughts appear to be. That's really about all I'm doing, is giving you an idea of how I'm measuring it. So hopefully that helps you a little bit while you're doing your work and making sense of the template, and we'll just kind of go from there, really. So those things I wanted to make sure you got today. And again, what we did is we covered, how to do a lit review. At least I gave you a sample paragraph. And I gave you, we went over how to create operational definitions. I gave you some examples of how that could be done. Okay, so that's really what I wanted to do today. Now, hopefully what I am sharing with you on video makes enough sense to where you can more or less replicate what I am doing. So the only differences are going to be that you're going to be using, you may have some variations in terms of your demographic variables beyond the ones that I think are kind of essential, which are, age, gender, and ethnicity. And you will almost assuredly have different main variables, okay? And those may be questionnaires that you are going to use or whatever else. But mainly just tell me how you're going to measure it. If you're measuring depression, for example, depression might be a score on the Beck Depression Inventory, with a higher score indicating higher level of depression. If it's anxiety, there's all sorts of anxiety scales out there, but it's probably going to be a score of some sort that indicate on, whatever the name of that scale is, that indicates a higher level of anxiety and so on. But just tell me how you're measuring. I don't want the concept. Many of you are measuring depression and anxiety, as it turns out, so I don't need to know the concept. What I need to know is, the measurement, essentially. That's it. Nothing more, nothing less. And so if you can do that, then you're doing wonderful. And again, that's going to be important because those are some of the elements that we are dealing with in Module 2. Okay, so I'm wanting to make sure that you're off to a good, on a good footing. In another video, I'm going to need to go through and kind of work through what a rationale should look like. I'm also going to need to spend some time going over what needs to go into the methods section, so that doesn't get completely borked. But again, we've given you tons of instructions for how to make this work. Okay, so try to follow the instructions, and that should help you out considerably. And please look at the feedback and make sure that you're understanding that feedback and that you can then make the modifications you need to make along the way. Doing so will give you a better prospectus template and will result in a higher grade. And my goal is for everybody to get A's on the prospectus template. That's always my wish anyways, but typically A's and B's are pretty good. I can hang with that. All right, so keep working. Those of you who've been working, if you haven't been turning in stuff to me, start turning in stuff. You're starting to miss out on points, and I don't want that for you. And so we'll leave on that particular note. All right, have a good day and take care.